Hello, welcome to my astrological interpretation for the week of March 30th, Monday, today, all the way till Sunday, April 5th. In a nutshell, I can tell you this is a very social week. It is a very relational week, and it is a very full week. That's because we have a full moon happening on Wednesday, and that full moon is itself sandwiched in the days prior and the days after by many catalyzing energies which want us to push forward in who we are, in what we enjoy the most sincerely, all in the context of us recognizing how much we are changing in our mind. Okay? So I'm going to give a very brief overview day by day, just right here, right now. And then I'm going to pull up my screen and I will show you on the charts and I'll annotate how I reach the interpretations that I do. So thank you for being here. Let's hop into it. For each day, I'll just tell you what I think the main transit, the main aspect is, and that means the tightest orb of exactitude, if you will. And I preface with this because this is a week, especially where a lot is compounding, especially till Friday. And so it might seem as though I'm omitting things, but take it all in one go to kind of realize everything is affecting everything. So what I'll describe for Friday, you'll already be feeling it today on Monday. What I described for Tuesday will be embroiled somewhere on Sunday. It's kind of like a fractal equation blooming, if you will. Okay. Starting today on Monday, we have Venus actually entering one of her home signs of Taurus. Taurus is a zodiacal sign. Venus is actually the planet, the ruling planet of Taurus. So this is a lovely transit in it of itself. Okay. What's happening when Venus enters the sign of Taurus is that she immediately goes into a square with an asteroid in the sky called Juno. And I will talk more about the asteroids when I go deeper into my interpretation for Monday. But for now, very quickly, I will say we are catalyzed into making physical space for an intellectual commitment on Monday. On Tuesday, the moon will actually be in the same place as it was on Monday. Monday and Tuesday, both, we have the moon moving through the sign of Virgo. Virgo is all about organization. On Tuesday, the moon will first oppose Mars at some point early in the day, and then later in the day, it will trine Uranus. Okay? When the moon opposes Mars, we're going to be catalyzed into some action, some inspired action. Okay? By later in the day, when the moon is making a trine to Uranus, we're going to basically realize that we've created an opportunity for ourselves to understand our value better. This is all happening through this organizational, devotional work when moon is transiting through Virgo. Wednesday is really when the energy shifts, the moon moves into Libra, and we really kick off this full moon in Libra. I'll say much more about it in a moment here. The essence of what I see with this full moon in Libra is that we have a very strong sense of self. We are dancing with someone else who also has a very strong sense of self. We're seeing a full picture of our relational selves, our individual selves, and we've seen where we need to balance by the time of this full moon. Again, I want to go more into depth about this because this is the essence of what an opposition is in this, again, very essential axis of self and other of Aries Libra. So this is about feeling into yourself. Is it time to retreat or is it time to advance? Just because the moon is very full doesn't mean it's going to be time for everybody to advance. It very much so depends on what was happening before the full moon. What energy do you have for yourself? What energy do you have to give? And most importantly, are you attuned to responding to your own internal knowing and intuition about how to show up socially? By Thursday, we have a very lovely energy of understanding and communication happening with Mercury in the sign of Pisces, almost exact in its trine to Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. So these are water signs, essentially pointing to Any type of poetic communication that we are able to express on Thursday lines us almost exactly to an opportunity in which we can expand our emotional wisdom. That's Jupiter in Cancer. Mercury in Pisces is about a poetic communication. A trine is a wonderful opportunity. Jupiter in Cancer is about our emotional wisdom. So when we can speak beautifully, speak poetically about what is true for us, we expand our own emotional capacity, our own emotional wisdom. Again, more on that in just a moment here. Friday, as I said earlier, Friday is really the day where I think we're going to be feeling the most, okay? Even though this is 2 days after the full moon in Libra, normally we would say a full moon is the time where the moon is at its peak and this emotions run the most high, but I don't know, looking at the chart, I think that Friday will actually be the most intense day this week. That's because we will have, firstly, the moon move into the sign of Scorpio. And this is a time over any 1 month where we are feeling the most intense because the moon will always move through the sign of Scorpio once a month. It's just that time of month where we might feel we are darker than normal. We are deeper in our own internal reckoning than normal. But it's not just moon in Scorpio, it's moon opposing Venus exactly as Venus exactly squares Pluto. Okay, so Friday is also the day where we get the exact square between Venus and Pluto. And if you remember on Monday, we had an exact square between Juno and Pluto. So this is the second exact square that we're getting between Venus and a planet in Aquarius. So this is that second decision, that second bookend this week where we are interfacing our material reality, which is Taurus, with our minds. And this first quarter square says we really have to make a brave decision in our material reality in order to really step into how big our minds have been changing, okay? We'll go into more in this in a few moments here, but let me get through the weekend really quickly. The beautiful thing is that Friday kind of brings us into something really, really deep. But then Saturday and Sunday, we have the moon still in Scorpio basically all weekend. And on Saturday, the moon will complete a grand water trine, okay? And that's between the moon, Mercury, and Jupiter. As I mentioned in the days prior with Mercury and Jupiter's trine, there's an emotional opportunity to communicate something poetic, and that helps us to expand our emotional maturity. And now the moon will be in Scorpio, kind of completing that beautiful trine, which means we're actually going to be locking into the deeper emotional shift that can happen, the deeper change that can happen really within a very intimate part of ourselves when we know there is safety, when we know there is intellectual safety and emotional safety that will meet us in that deep reckoning, in that deep part of ourselves. Okay? On Sunday, the moon in Scorpio, the same moon in Scorpio, will oppose Uranus right at the end of Taurus there. And I think that by the end of this week, by Sunday, we will have expanded our capacity. We might have pushed ourselves quite a bit into a new emotional capacity such that we can see change happen. We can see the change of our own value system, which is Uranus and Taurus. And so there might be a small change by the end, by Sunday. Again, lunar transits aren't the biggest. That's why I'm not paying as much attention to, let's say, the full moon on Wednesday as I am really looking at the compounding events of what's going to pull up by Friday, okay? So I hope this all makes sense, and I hope you see the flow. We're going from a more mechanical beginning of the week, Monday, Tuesday, very social, very relational midweek, and then a very, very deep end of the week, okay? Something I'm going to talk about after we look at the charts is actually Aquarius and Pluto and Juno and what is the catalyst of this change in our minds that we are going through right now. Because ultimately, there's a lot of social emotional stuff going on this week, but that's not the main point, okay? The main point is that the neural networks of our brain are changing. And as our networks change in our brain, we see our networks change outside of us. We see our technological networks change outside of us. We see technology change and completely go through a whole system upgrade, reboot, okay? Whether you're taking that positively or negatively in your own life, I don't know. That's up to you in your chart. But I will say this Pluto and this Juno at the early degrees of Aquarius This is the real stuff. And I will circle back to this after I go through the charts of the week because I think it bears repeating from a couple of things that happened a few years ago. So let's take this a few steps at a time. So first, let's look at today. Let's look at Monday. If you're watching this on Tuesday or later, just feel free to reflect on what was going on Monday. What I have highlighted on the screen here is that first quarter square between Venus in Taurus and Juno in Aquarius. All right. I know it's a first quarter square because Juno moves much slower than Venus. So at some point over the last, let's see, 3.5 months, Venus had made a conjunction to Pluto when Venus was in the sign of Capricorn. This would have been January, early January. But Juno itself has recently moved into the sign of Aquarius, being only now at 0 degrees. And Venus, as of today, as of Monday, Venus is now in Taurus. So this is a square in the fixed axis. And we can see because Venus was here a few months ago, she's gone this far. Okay. This is a 90-degree aspect. Okay. It's the first challenge, essentially, in the relationship pattern between Venus and Juno in this sense. So what happens at this first gate, this first square, first quarter square is what it calls, because we see this square, right? This is a external decision that we have to make. It's one that we might feel somewhat vulnerable around because until now, it's been very internal. These first 60 degrees are very internal. It's when you get between 60 to 90 that you start realizing it's time to show up outside. It's time to share what's been going on internally. And at this point, what you have to share is Venus. So what does Venus share? Venus itself is very receptive. It's very open. She's not necessarily an active principle Venus, but when you put her in this configuration, Venus is about making space. Venus is about being open, being actively open to something, actively open to Taurus, which is stability, which is materiality, which is your sensory reality. Okay? Touch, taste, smell, feel, your money, what makes you feel good. So Venus kind of needs to say what she wants and make space for it because she is responding to the catalyzing effect of some Aquarian commitment that you want to make, that I want to make, that everyone wants to make some type of Aquarian commitment right now, okay? Juno is the asteroid of commitment. It is the asteroid of the role of commitment, often talked about and symbolized by Juno, which is the wife of Jupiter in mythology, Greek mythology. You can go look at that if you want to. I don't like to dwell on the details of that. I take it quite literally, quite face value. Juno wants to be in the role of a commitment. A commitment in the mythology was of being a wife, kind of regardless of whether the husband was doing his job or not as a husband. Juno wanted to be a wife. And so in this case, we want to commit to something Aquarian, which is something in our own mind. It's a different mindset. It could also be a group participation. It could be a way of living life, an ideology. There is something of our minds that we are wanting to commit to. And what I see and what I think here is that this is the breaking free from a lot of the old paradigms we've been in over the last several decades with Capricorn stuff, okay? So we've known this for a while, but there's something about what happens on Monday when Venus moves into her, she rules this sign of Taurus. We can really sink our heels into something deep and sensory and real and tangible in reality that will help us to see, by contrast, what it is that we are changing in our minds. Okay, so a square is never a bad thing. It's not always a challenge, but it is an active principle. Again, so in this way, we have to make space for a commitment on Monday. And like I said, the commitment is to our own mind. It's not necessarily to someone else, it's to our own mind. It's to breaking free from really quite anything that was holding us back. So that's how we're starting the week. As I said, Moon is also in Virgo all day Monday. I'm in EST reading this, so please do your conversions if necessary. But Moon in Virgo is all about organizing, organizing your life, getting your emotions in order, which often has to do with getting your physical body in order, getting your what you eat in order, feeling like you have the nutrition that you do, kind of planning out your week. Okay. So we're starting out in a very organized way, and we recognize like, okay, it's time to commit to what makes me feel good so that I can use my brain in the right way. Okay. But this is a square after all, which means there is something active that we have to do. It's an active making space. It's kind of like cleaning the temple so that you have space for the ritual to happen later. Or you can apply that to the gym. Clean your gym so that you know you can go back to it and use it and not get like ringworm or something, okay? That's a funny, intense example. So by Tuesday, and this is the very end of the day of Tuesday, by the way, you'll notice as I read charts, I always put for the last moment of the day so that we can get a full picture of what's happened. I have here circled this later degrees of Virgo because that's where the moon is really going to pass. It was around here in the day before, so it's passing this whole way. It will reach the very first degree of Libra by the end of the day, but I'm not really going to talk about the moon being in Libra today. I'm going to talk about the moon being in the late degrees of Virgo here, hence this little circle. In any case, at the late degrees of Virgo, the moon will first oppose Mars, and then it will trine Uranus. Okay, so I mentioned this at the beginning. Opposing Mars is very much so that kick in the pants to say, okay, I'm committed to the my own betterment through the moon in Virgo. I want to heal myself. And now that there's been that commitment made to whatever group, through whatever intellectual process is happening, the commitment to make some space for yourself, now that that's happening, it's almost like the moon, you're going to feel catalyzed with Mars down here to take inspired action. Mars and Pisces being inspired action. Pisces, inspiration, Mars, action. Whenever the moon opposes Mars, we see it very clearly. We're in a relationship that any opposition is about a relationship. We see something outside of us that's catalyzing us into a greater understanding. And so often because we're able to see it clearly, we are able to participate in whatever it is, which either means we're going to go further into it or we're going to take a step back, but we're going to be able to see it. We're going to be able to take action. Some inspired action will catalyze us at first on Tuesday. And then what happens is the moon will make that trine to Uranus, okay? A trine is an opportunity. Uranus and Taurus is about material intelligence. It's about how you have intrinsic value and it's you having awakened to that intrinsic value. It's about I say neural networks in your brain for an Aquarius stuff, but Uranus and Taurus is like if you've ever done acupuncture, acupressure, it's the meridians in the body because Uranus is electricity, but Taurus is like fleshy reality. It's like ripe fruit, okay? So it's the intelligence of eating things when they're ripe, okay? So I think what'll happen is we'll be catalyzed into some type of action, whether we move into it or we move out of it. And in doing that, we're going to have some type of realization on Tuesday, okay? Again, these are lunar transits, not crazy. What happens then is that by the end of the day on Wednesday, we have the full moon in Libra. And here's what I think is happening. Monday, Tuesday, we're doing a lot of work to organize ourselves, put ourselves together, take the action we need to, have the realizations we need to, such that our sense of self is very strong, okay? This is this Saturn-Sun conjunction. It's quite wide now, but Saturn is strength. It's reality. It is very reliable. And the sun is where we are present right now. It's Aries season. It's all about the very present moment that we are in, okay? So we've organized a lot of what we need to in terms of where our will wants us to go, the creative inspiration that we have. And there's a big commitment going on here. The main focus that I want to say about this full moon is really that we have an incredibly strong sense of self. We have an incredibly strong sense of self that we're working with at this full moon, and we're going to be interfacing with other people who also have an incredibly strong sense of self. But this is in Libra, so we were wanting to balance. What are we going to balance? If our strong sense of self has not been helpful, if our strong sense of self has not been helping us to go into the world in a way in which we can enjoy ourselves, in which we can make social relations and actually be a part of a community that's helping us to change our mind. Okay, big deal down here. community, changing our minds. It is a social, it's an air sign. So this Libra air sign. If we're too hold into ourselves, this Libra moon is going to help us get back into balance. If we have been too social and we haven't really been doing the work yet of strengthening our sense of self, this full moon will pull us back in. Okay, a full moon is not always about everyone always goes outside and has a big time. The full moon is a recognition of how is the balance going. Okay, it's kind of like a teeter-totter. Is it going like that or is it going like that? Are you up here? Are you down here? Here? Like how are your relationships going? It's not any one specific meaning about, oh, the relationship will come or it won't come. It's showing you actively where you're out of balance, and it will quite literally create the circumstance to get you back into balance. If you've been at an extreme, you might need an extreme circumstance to get you back into balance. But if you've been balanced, then you might really be able to understand why. Okay? There's a few things happening also at this full moon, like it's exactly squared Jupiter. And in this case, I really like that because we've been really working on this Jupiter for a while now. This is a heavy Jupiter now. It's emotionally steady. It's emotionally really, really full the way that I see it. And it's been in this trine to Jupiter the Mercury's been in this trine to Jupiter, which is just a lot of consistency, a lot of great possibility moving between our right and our left brains. There's not as much space for incoherence socially right now, or rather emotionally. Okay, this is a strong emotional coherence between like how we're understanding our emotion. So I really like this full moon. It's very much so worth stating. These are these two things I'll go over. Very much so worth stating. The full moon is ruled by Libra. Okay, sorry. Very much so worth stating the full moon is ruled by Venus. Venus rules two signs, Taurus, which is the internal face of Venus, and then Venus rules Libra as well, which is the external social face of Venus. Okay, so looking to where Venus is right now, we get more understanding of the full moon. Venus, again, in Taurus, as I just mentioned, having just gone through this big decision to whatever commitment is being made in our minds. And I also will say, about to make another big change as she reaches 5 degrees in a few days. This is 3. There's some pressure here. Venus has some pressure here of knowing she needs to step out and create even more space to address something even bigger in her mind, okay? And that dynamic won't be fully resolved at this full moon, no, but the full moon will show you where the state of your balance, the state of your social balance. So the best thing I have to say for this full moon is just really trust your body, trust your physical body. And I'll keep saying that over the next few days, but you really just must trust how you are physically feeling. Venus in Taurus is very receptive to physicality. In fact, it is uniquely only receptive to like the proof being in the pudding, if you will, at this time. So that's what I see for the full moon. But again, Venus is still building in the square to Pluto, which means we might be wanting a catharsis on Wednesday, but I don't think we're going to get it just yet. Worth noting, even on Monday, when Venus moves into Taurus, we split rulership in a way that we haven't yet with all of the other signs, all of the other planets. So by Monday, and even we'll feel this very deeply, I think, this whole week, but Venus begins to rule a lot more things now than she did when she was in Aries. When she was in Aries, she was ruled by Mars and going through this mutual reception, which I've talked a lot about, this mutual reception between Neptune and Mars. But now that Venus is in a sign that she rules. Venus isn't reporting to anyone anymore. So this sensory, emotional body is quite solid, quite intelligent. And not only that, but Venus is ruling Uranus, which means that Venus is ultimately ruling Pluto. Pluto in Aquarius, Aquarius ruled by Uranus and Taurus. Venus in Taurus is the ruler of Uranus and Taurus. Not only that, but the full moon itself, as I said, is ruled by this Venus, and wherever the moon goes is where Jupiter is being ruled, as well as Jupiter is in Cancer. Cancer is ruled by the moon, and the moon, at this case, is ruled by Venus. So we have a real split happen, and we're going to, I think, feel it for the first time in a big way on Wednesday, where it's not all just about action and letting go. Action being Mars, Neptune being letting go. Until today, until Monday, and really we'll feel it on Wednesday at the full moon, we've been operating in this paradigm where we either just take an inspired action or we kind of surrender. It's like take inspired action, surrender, take inspired action, surrender. But now, again, since Monday, since Venus moved into Taurus, we can kind of relax into reality a little bit in a way we haven't been. And again, I think we're going to be feeling this a lot. There will be pressure, the pressure that's building, but not yet, not at the full moon yet. I think we're going to be wanting it to release by the full moon. I don't think it will. And to be clear, I don't think that it will, simply because Venus won't have made that exact square yet. That exact square will happen when Venus here reaches 5 degrees, which will be on Friday. On Thursday, to be honest, there isn't anything super exact happening. The moon remains in Libra, so we're kind of still feeling very full in whatever social dynamic has been clarified. But I do think this is close enough, 39, 55, and into the next day, the aspect will perfect. And so this is what I was talking about. Mercury in the sign of Pisces is incredibly poetic, incredibly imaginative, incredibly adept at rationally communicating something otherwise incredibly vast, incredibly boundaryless. And in allowing ourselves to communicate something poetic or something incredibly vast, something imaginative, something deeply creative, in allowing ourselves to do that on this day, on Wednesday, we're exactly going to hit this trine. This is a trine because they're both in the water signs and they're around the same degree right now. This trine to Jupiter. Mercury is the way we rationally make sense of things. And then Jupiter is the way we actually get the clicking moment that we make sense of things. And so when these are in a harmonious aspect as they are right now, the emotional wisdom, the faith in our family, perhaps, or in our home that we've been growing over the last almost year now, we can really talk about it. We can make sense of it. And the more we lean into talking about things from an expanded perspective, which is Mercury and Pisces, the more we do that, the even greater blessings that we're going to feel. And that blessing specifically will have this flavor of emotional wisdom, like really deeply understanding our emotional logic, which is very right-brained, right? Mercury being left-brained, Jupiter being right-brained, and Cancer being emotional. Cancer being the deepest part of ourselves, our families. Cancer being what we want to see grow at its own natural pace in the same way we would want to see our child grow and become its own thing and nurture it and feed it, okay? So that's what is going on. I think Thursday really helps us prepare for Friday. There's a lot of intensity on Friday, and I think the nice thing that happens today on Thursday is that we have this emotional, intellectual context for the depth that we're about to enter on Friday. By the end of the day on Friday, the moon will be in Scorpio, which is a much deeper sign. Scorpio is really the sign of the merging of two things. Libra is when the two things can see each other really, really clearly. And they can enjoy each other. But Scorpio is really when they merge, okay? And that means there is an amount of trust necessary. There is a deepening of intimacy necessary. And also, this is the area of our lives where we store a lot of betrayal, where we gave someone trust and it was not, like, it was abandoned, or it was not given the, like, we didn't feel it was reciprocated. We actually felt actively hurt by a betrayal. So that can be stored here. We can be accessing these emotions, and I think it's likely that we might, because the moon itself is making a square to Pluto. Pluto in Aquarius being this way we've been using our minds in the past. And if the way that we have been thinking about the world, the way that we've been talking to ourselves internally, the way we've been using our brain, essentially, if that hasn't been supporting us, this square will ask us to change again. But this is what's called a last quarter square, because the moon is actually heading towards Pluto instead of having moved away from it. So the moon, in essence, has already gone 270 degrees at this point, which means it's reaching the end of its journey, its current cycle with Pluto, which is an archetype of throwing off the precedent of the past. The moon has already done 270 degrees of work here. And in Scorpio, you're throwing off the betrayal. You're throwing off the way that the things that you've held on to in the cycle that you don't need anymore, the way that you're seeing it. And in this way, it's the way that you're seeing your mind or your social groups, or maybe it's the way you've seen yourself as betrayed by a social group in the past. Like this configuration alone, and we haven't even talked about Venus yet, okay? But this configuration of Moon squaring Pluto alone is one that really asks you to use the strength of your mind to let go of unhelpful, deep feelings and kind of release them, purge them, burn them off, okay? But that's not it. In fact, that's like the least thing that happens on this day. Oops, I erased everything. But what's really happening, the biggest thing that's happening today, which is Friday, is that Venus will make an exact square to Pluto, okay? Like I said on Monday, if you remember, Venus had been here earlier this year, again, likely January, mid-January. And so Venus made a conjunction to Pluto. Venus was like, okay, Venus, again, where we are open and receptive. And at that point, we were open and receptive to Pluto, which is change, which is deep change in our social life. And so there was likely a social change that you were open to and that you wanted to make, but it might have been really deep. Like it might have come from the death of a social group. It doesn't always have to be that intense or bad necessarily, but there is a deep restructuring whenever any planet conjuncts Pluto. And now Venus has gone herself, she's gone 90 degrees away from Pluto. And as I said, that's the first gate. It's a very active gate, okay? By contrast, this gate up here, when the moon is now heading back towards Pluto, this gate is about letting go. It's not active. But when it's only 90 degrees, you got to kick a door down, basically, okay? Venus has to kick some type of door down to make space for Pluto, to make space for the changes that she committed to making when she conjuncted Pluto back in January. Okay, this is really big. This is going to be the day where we feel the catharsis because we're going to be pushed to opening ourselves up to change in a way that we haven't yet. And this is very, very vulnerable. This is very physically vulnerable. It's also very emotionally vulnerable because the moon will be there making an opposition to Venus. Venus is like where we are physically, sensorially feeling things. But Scorpio is the opposite. Scorpio is the psychic. It's the deep, emotional, brooding, soul level reality. It's this subtle reality that we can't actually tangibly see or measure. So it's the emotional, psychological undercurrents that are going on, and they're seeing each other directly. And this is called a T-square. They're both squaring Pluto from each side, which is deeply intense. We're understanding on a psychological level why we have to let go of being a victim, and we're understanding on a material level why we have to choose the change at the same time. Does that make sense? Write me in the comment below if you need me to explain that another way, because this feels incredibly serious, and yet at the same time, the potential is huge, because what are the odds that at the same exact day that Pluto or that Venus makes her exact square to Pluto, what is the odds that the moon will be like pretty much exactly opposite her, T-squaring it from the other side? This is a whole lot of focus down here. It's a whole lot of focus on whatever relationship we just came to light with the full moon in Libra, how that deepens, how we want to merge with that a little bit more, the insecurity it could bring up, or the strength that any combination of these big feelings, the strength in our material reality that we want to be able to hold space for. Because again, this 90 degree square with Venus in Taurus, this earth sign, is about like literally holding space, but not in an aggressive way, but in a soft way, like holding space for yourself to really grow into greater emotional capacity, greater emotional maturity. Again, getting that from this trine. Okay? The very cool thing that happens the next day on Saturday, speaking of emotional maturity, is that we get this grand trine because the moon will have deepened into Scorpio, which means it'll have hit exactly a trine to Jupiter and a trine to Mercury. So, whatever intellectual emotional understanding we had earlier in the week that we have been developing that might have been pressure tested, the moon meets it and creates a complete circuit. This is what's called a grand trine. Grand trines happen in the same element, in this case, water element, emotion. We have the depth emotion of the soul. We have the creative emotion of like transcendence and God. And we have the deeply personal emotion of Cancer. Okay. All of these things are working together very, very nicely on Saturday. And I think that it's helping us. In fact, it is the saving grace for this square between Venus and Pluto. And it's the reason why I think Venus is going to be strong enough to hold the space that she will for herself in order to really deepen in this change that she committed to, okay, with Pluto. Really, it's the same thing going on Sunday because the moon will just be in late Scorpio. The moon will oppose Uranus on this day. This is a lunar transit. It's not going to be too huge. Lunar transits are not always this huge, but in terms of the like small currents that we might feel throughout the day on Sunday, it'll just be, I think, because we've increased our capacity so much emotionally to hold such a deep change that's going on in our brain and in our physical reality, we're gonna be able to really weather that change, and we're gonna be able to see it. We're gonna be able to deepen. Again, Uranus Taurus for me is material reality. We're gonna be no, sorry, material intelligence. We're gonna be able to deepen in material intelligence because we've done so much work. We're gonna be able to see it over here with the moon, and I think it's gonna feel really good. The moon will move into Sagittarius, and we'll feel much more optimistic about everything that's been going on. Okay. So that's the week. Now I want to talk about Aquarius, Pluto, and Juno, more so just about Pluto and Aquarius for a few minutes here. Okay? So, because I've just had a realization myself about it. If you think about your deepest purpose, you think about how when you have a purpose for your life, it makes everything easier. You don't like you have a kind of a North Star. Okay? Now, we've had such a profound amount of planets moving through Pisces up until like a month ago, which to me, my personal configuration to life was all about unconditional love, openness, and non-grasping, non-attachment, like truly locking in an idea of unconditional love, which is a Pisces archetype, which is the Neptune archetype. Now we're in a moment where Neptune has moved into Aries. Saturn has moved into Aries. Aries is about the present moment here and now. It's like war. It's like we can't live in a dreamland anymore with Pisces that, but we were essentially living in a dreamland, in a delusional dreamland for a while, but that was necessary, that was purposeful. We were connecting to all that is in a Piscean way. Now we are connecting to all that is in our own individuality, in our own individual life, okay? So returning to this idea of singular purpose, it is only with a singular purpose that you will be able to actually feel as though your story is moving forward. If you feel scattered, you're never going to know, you're never going to be able to actually track progress in your life, even if that progress is like linear, it's linear, you can call it not real, you can call it like don't try to become perfect, like because we live in such a spiritual world now, like okay, sure. But I think the point of life is kind of to watch yourself grow emotionally. And because that's truly where you can feel an evolution is in your emotional body. And that can come from so many different configurations. It's not just from becoming conventionally successful. Okay. So let me be clear about that. But even I, no, I'm a normal person. It's hard to like lock on to one goal and go for it because the amount of insecurity, the amount of like fear that can come up, especially when you're doing something a little bit less conventional, whether it's art or astrology or anything where you really have to go on your own path. Again, an Aries situation. For the record, everybody, my Saturn return is happening on April 14th in 2 weeks. So let's see what happens. Okay. But I'm very much so, and I've always been this way, where it's like you have to take responsibility for your life, which means you set the rules, which is very much so Saturn in Aries. Okay. This is a nice aspect that's going on between the Aries stuff and the Aquarius stuff. Okay. Aquarius is about individuality. It is about the self as it is compared to the group, the in group and the out group. Okay? It's about the edge of known reality. And Pluto being there means all of our subconscious focus is going to be at the edge of the known reality. So when I talk earlier about some big change being made to, a new commitment to, or like with this square from Venus to this part of the chart here. This is about the edge of reality as you know it. Your edge is going to be different than somebody else's edge. So it's not just rebellion for all, it's not just new technology for all, while there are widespread changes that everyone is witnessing and agreeing upon, of course, not agreeing upon, but agreeing in that we witness it. We have a shared reality, which is definitely Pluto and Aquarius, change of power, power going to the people in Aquarius, but I'm digressing a little bit. I was confused. I've been very confused for a while. I'm a Pisces rising, what can I say? But the idea of astrology as an Aquarian, it's not an idea, it is a correlated thing. Astrology itself is an Aquarius concept because it's literally the edge of our known reality, which is Saturn. Saturn is our known reality. If you think of the Earth as a Saturn thing, the stars, the backdrop of the constellations is the edge of our reality, right? It's like a limitless edge of our reality. The idea that we can read the stars and gain any type of information that can be rationalized, okay? That's Aquarius. And that to me is astrology. So I personally have been struggling with astrology. If you've listened to what I say for the last few months, it's like whether it's people not like people thinking astrology is crazy, or it's me feeling like we can actually transcend our astrology. Like astrology isn't the real edge anymore. There's a different edge that I think wants to be contended with. That question of you pushing, you killing off the current edge of your reality, Pluto is that. Pluto is killing off, okay? But we're in a period right now, we're in an interesting period right now where we can actually stabilize. Sorry, this looks crazy. Where we can actually stabilize with this Saturn in a sextile to Pluto. We can actually stabilize ourselves and the current level at which we are engaging with the edge of reality. Does that make sense? So it's actually time to like really deepen in whatever this Pluto is for you, whether it's astrology, whether it's a new group of friends, whether it's a new idea. Allow it to simultaneously kill off what you thought it was and be reborn within it because Pluto is both the killing off and the rebirth. It is the merging, it's the separating. It is the fundamental soul level in breath and out breath. But like any other part of the chart, it is not static, it is dynamic. Okay? The final thing I'll say here, which is what I've been trying to say this whole time, but I've been talking. Think about if you are confused like me as to what this Pluto was, because I've been praying. I'm like, take away astrology from me if it's not for me, because it can be very, very intellectually difficult. Okay. Intellectual difficulties, Pluto in Aquarius. Okay. Aquarius, intellect, difficulties, Pluto. And so I keep talking to the universe, to God, to whatever it is, right? Talking to myself. Please let me let go of astrology if it's not for me anymore. But time and time again, I'm pulled back. And I think to the Jupiter, Saturn, oops, that's not Saturn, Saturn conjunction. This is a symbol for a conjunction. This conjunction that happened in 2020, 2021, where they conjuncted at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is right here, which is basically where Pluto is right now and was. I started taking astrology very seriously at this time, and it was a new pursuit. Okay? In terms of actually making what you like putting your wisdom into the world in a way that it will actually land, that's a Jupiter Saturn dynamic. And so whatever you started working on in 2020, 2021, I would venture to say that's what you're wanting to deepen in right now. And there might have been some insecurity around that because it is just so gosh darn intense and heavy, and it pushes you to the edge of the seat, to the edge of who you know yourself to be. But now that Saturn is here, structuring the present moment, okay? Not an ego identity, structuring the present moment. I think we are able to be more confident and take more advantage. And the final thing I'll say here, we're not going to let relationships push us off this Pluto path anymore, push us off the Aquarius path. This square says you need to show up and make space for what you like, okay? Even I have had this issue. People that I've dated, blah, 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 that are like, oh, astrology is so dumb. And I'm like, wow, will I ever meet anyone who's like open? Because all that was reflecting, I realize, is my own insecurity around astrology, my own insecurity around walking my own path. Someone will appear in my life who supports this. And many people have now. I've made many changes in my life who supports this when I am coming into more strength around it. Okay, Saturn in Aries. So it's very much so maybe not about love for you in the same way that it is for me, but my point is there is something we are very deeply stabilizing in, I think, that started in 2020, 2021, a very big pursuit that we knew we wanted to study and gain wisdom in, which is Jupiter. And that we also wanted to master it, which is a Saturn thing. Okay. So if you're at all confused, I don't think you're probably going to be at this time, but I will say this Venus squaring Pluto is emotionally very intense. Resources can become very intense at this time. You can feel insecure about standing up for whatever this work that you committed to a few years ago was. But Venus wants you to be brave. Venus wants you to just hold emotional space for yourself, essentially. Okay? So that is what I wanted to get across for this week. Thursday feels much more intense. No, I'm sorry. Friday feels like where we get the release valve. Wednesday, things might feel really, really full. Friday, we get the release valve. And then the rest of the week is very much so about the wisdom that we can reap from it, the depth when we let ourselves go into the depth and trust ourselves and trust reality to help connect us to what we need from a physical, resourceful perspective, we will find coherence emotionally. Okay? So I think it's so powerful. Trust yourself so deeply. Listen to your body above all, very much so Venus in Taurus. And it's not all about going out and being social. This week is about trusting your inner sense of what you need. Do you want to go out? Is it time to share yourself more boldly with the world? Is it time to be more brave about who you are? Or is it time to like listen to other people a little bit more? Is it time to like stop feeling betrayed by disappointments you've had in relationships? Disappointments basically based on whoever this new person is that you are becoming. Pluto is like the deepest part of ourselves. Aquarius is our mind. This is a fundamental thing where our mind is changing, and who we then become also changes. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Personal readings are available for April. Go check it out if you want to. And I'll probably put a poll up soon about what type of workshop people want because it's hard for me to like nail that down and figure it out. But I have a feeling it could be very fun and a more easily accessible way to work with you and work with people. But if you do want readings, they're an hour and a half. They're very deep. That's kind of the way that I work. So, Let me know what you think. I hope you have a lovely full moon. Trust yourself. You can handle it. I know you can. Reach out to get help from whoever you need to, but you have more capacity than you do think emotionally. And that is the sign of change. And that's all we want to do. So, bye for now.